so I have to stay. Right? So it's a bunch of people. Everybody back there. It's been a long journey. This talk I'm going to give tonight is about measurables of the quantum form of biology. What I mean by that is, how do you measure your performance biochemically? Traditionally, lab tests kind of tell us a snapshot of where we are in time, but we really don't know exactly where we are at that moment. And my field is neuropathy, which means a problem with the nerve. My field of diabetic neuropathy, that's obviously the lower extremity. But in my studies over the last 50 years, I had the opportunity to train with Dr. Lee Gallen out of Johns Hopkins, who taught me peripheral nerve surgery 25 years ago. And in that quest, learning that material, I said to him back in about 2004, I said, Dr. Gallen, I think there's more to your theory. He said, he's written 2 textbooks. He says, why don't you figure it out? Not nicely. What I meant by that, the biochemistry of what he has taught me, I thought there was more to it. So I did, outside of my box of the reference points, I found a doctor from Johns Hopkins that went to Stanford, and Dr. John Cook. He's a cardiologist by training, has a PhD in vascular biology, and we work with his molecule. And I won't get too far into biochemistry. Asymmetric dimethyl arginine. Big word, but it blocks the nitric oxide pathway. And I believe Dr. Nathan was here last night.
Yes.
Yeah, so he's an expert in nitric oxide, and I did not know this. I met Dr. Nathan in Newport Beach, and he knows Dr. Cook, who I work with at Stanford. So that was in 2004. So I came up with the theory that the nitric oxide pathway is being blocked by sugar. And 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I guess it is now, that was said, no, that's not correct. Well, it is correct. So it took that long to figure it out. So I wrote a book called Sugar Crush, which you can read. It came out in 2015. So I talk about nitric oxide, asymmetric dimethyl arginine, and all these different things that pertain to longevity. Because without nitric oxide, you can't produce oxygen. Without oxygen, the plant dies. So when in that journey, I also, with Dr. Cook at Stanford, he is now at Baylor, and guess what he is the world's leading authority on? Stem cells. Stem cells. I asked John Cook the other day, I said, John, how long could we live right now if you set your intention on it and did the things that I'm going to talk to you about? And the answer is 100 right now. So, but how do you do it? Setting your intention. So you have to use all the things that you're going to learn that you talk about. And they have to all be put together. But the key word is sugar. And that specific word is high fructose corn syrup. So I'm going to give you a little journey here, if I can get the clicker. There we go. So, that's the introduction. Is that the sample? So, what I want to talk to you about is how to become that open conduit. Because if we look back in history, and this gentleman, Don Johansen, are you familiar with Lucy? Lucy, our first primate? Okay, Lucy, 3.2 million years ago, Don Johansen discovered her. That's 50 years ago. His institute is here at ASU, the Institute for Human Origins. Isn't that a great school? Yeah, this is the anniversary, 50th anniversary. So, what was Lucy? What did she eat? Well, she was an arboreal being, meaning she worked out, I'll give you 3.2 million worth of evolution in 2 minutes. So she got out of the tree, tasted bud, that tastes pretty good. Her ancestors were eating bamboo, and they still are for the apes. And as she tasted meat, she realized, but evolutionary-wise, this is what happened. So the alimentary canal shortened. So you don't need a big rib cage when you eat meat. So her rib cage got smaller, her knuckles came off the ground, and she had a plantar foot, meaning she could walk. And then her cerebral cortex enlarged, so she could think. Her hands were free to make instruments. This is taken 3.2 million years ago. Then something happened about 200,000 years ago, and there was a genetic change. And this is, I don't know if anybody knows Greg Braden. Yeah, so Greg talks about this extensively. He's a geologist. And on chromosome 2, we are not able to synthesize vitamin C. And we have some fermented food. That cabbage is fermented. That's a lot of vitamin C. So that's another one reason, aside from the nitric oxide. So we can't do that. We can't make vitamin C. I find it very unusual. So does Dr. Braden. And we have our own theories of why that happened. We won't go into that at the moment. But that's essential to convert L-arginine to nitric oxide. Because there's a coenzyme called tetrahydrobiopterin, which is the rotation to pH4. And you have to have vitamin C. If you don't have it, you're eating a lot of sugar, you will convert to what we call peroxynitrite. And that shuts off the blood supply. The nitric oxide opens it up. So that's all my other book. My new book is Unglued. So let's go back to the Battle of the Nile, my favorite battle of all time. France and England, and they were trying to dominate the world. And they had their, Lord Nelson was looking for the French fleet. And this all got measured. They didn't know at the Bay of Albacore, outside of Alexandria, Egypt, where the fleet was, but the French fleet came in and they docked. They weren't sure it was high or low tide. Critical mistake. Well, they were out in the middle of the bay, where Nelson saw them, came in on either side of the fleet and blew it up, and destroyed the entire French fleet. But the important part of that battle was the savants were on the hill in a town called Rashad. And you would know that as where the Rosetta Stone was discovered. And with them were 162 savants, one of which was Lavoisier, nitric oxide. He discovered that nitroglycerin helped with heart disease, which is amazing. So 162 of these people, and Fourier was there, and he developed the mathematics for satellites and everything else you can imagine. Anthropology, and every science we know today. And the reason I bring this up is because epigenetics, how many people are familiar with that term? Okay, so he was there too. His name was Saint Blair. And interesting how politics gets involved. But he was at the Battle of the Nile up on the hill, and he was experimenting with eggs, and he was injecting them. And I'm not sure if they were chicken eggs or not, but I assume they were. And he saw that the different progeny of the births of manipulating these eggs changed the output of the progeny. And he developed the concept of epigenetics before the genetics was even known. But his counterpart back in Paris was Courbet. Well, he was kind of a government guy. His theory prevailed for about the next 40 years because St. Blair was at the battle. So that happens in science, and it happens for lots of us for him to change that. So that's where the Battle of the Nile was, and right up Alexandria in 1798, which I think is amazing that they all discovered this. That's Lavoisier, and he was that nitric oxide. So nothing new under the sun. Next slide. So here's the Rosetta Stone. So why is that important? Because they took Coptic, Greek, and Sanskrit, and Champion, who is there, deciphered that. Took them about 8 years to do it. And that was a seminal moment in history. Next slide. So that's the frequencies of Fourier, and we have lots of companies that Dan in the back there notices and all watch, which operates on that frequency, which is amazing. And it is about frequency. Everything's about frequency. Yeah. And if you want to live to be 120, then you really have to pay attention to that. Next slide. So here I am, younger man, at Mayo, and I was thinking about rats and nerves, and I was trying to understand this nerve that I was looking at here, which is the femoral nerve, and I came to the conclusion that all the nerves are the same. It's just a function. So your olfactory nerve, which is the nerve involved in Alzheimer's, or the hypoglossal nerve, which is involved in articulation of the tongue and autism, or any nerve in the body, and it doesn't really matter. This is my theory of what I call the global compression theory. And how does sugar play into that? Well, it plays into it because if you'll notice, you see the white spot that I'm looking at? And I like to say, can you see what I see? No, you can't, because I'm looking through the microscope, and that's what I see. So when I talk to audiences, or even other doctors not in my field, and they say, what are you talking about? I say, well, that's what I see. But if you're not a surgeon, you're not going to see that. And even if you did, what would you do with it? So the basis for my theory is that, and that was 2011, that nerve gets compressed by sugar. I won't go into the deep part of biochemistry, but it's a chemical reaction. Sugar makes the nerve inflamed, and the covering around it is like shrink wrap. It makes it tight. So it cuts off the blood supply to the part, like the median nerve of your wrist, carpal tunnel. That's its function. Robert Kennedy Jr. was here yesterday giving a lecture. He's got dystonia, which means he can't express dystonia. So what is dystonia? That's a compressed nerve. It looks just like that. But if you talk to an ENT doctor, oh no, this is, this is, well, it's the same thing. What's the function of a larynx? The nerve moves a muscle. That's what that is. And it vibrates there, and you hear it as sound. If you do it here, that's the same thing, isn't it? So, we have been subjected to massive amounts of sugar for the last couple hundred years. All these diseases were described 1600s, Thomas Wills, 1800s was amazing step forward in understanding these things because of the microscope, and they could see these things, not as good as that. Now, my good friend Pete Hayden has an electron microscope, and it's about 10,000 deeper dive than what you see right there. So next slide. So that's what we see as we get deeper and deeper into the nerves, but it's all the same. It's sugar. Oh, I get that every day. But we make it so simple. Well, isn't that what we want to do? Yes, that's what it is. But the real question is, next slide, how do you get unblued? How do you get unblued? I'm going to ask a question here of the audience. Anybody know what the word glucose means? It's a Greek word. It means to stick together. So it means it's glue. So my new book is How to Get Unglued. Fermented foods for sure. Nitric oxide, absolutely. Pulse wave lasers, red light therapy, they all work. But if you're eating sugar all day, you're kind of fighting against yourself. But with stem cells, and that's the real point of my new book, as I say, because of that rat you just saw, stem cells don't give a rat's ass what you call uritis. And I mean that because the Chinese took that nerve, cut it out, put a neural tube in, injected the rat with stem cells, and the nerve grew back. Hence, stem cells don't give a rat's ass what you call uritis. You can call it MS, if it's that nerve, the vagus nerve. You can call it carpal tunnel, if it's that nerve. You can call it diabetic neuropathy. If those nerves, they're all the same, in my opinion. I'm a community involved. But back to Dr. Dillon. He's written 2 textbooks on this, 800 peer-reviewed articles. 800. He just retired this year. Answer sugar. But I asked him, did you ever read his book, textbook? I did. I read it 7 times. Very complicated. So, all these diseases are the same. It's caused by sugar. There's lots of ways to get unglued. I think the ultimate ungluing is stem cells. So I've had stem cells myself. I've done it for almost 20 years now. And that's a whole course in itself. Where do you get them? Which ones are the best? What's the dose? How do you inject them? So making that a real simple equation, we can take cells from a newborn, or fetus before the newborn. That's called embryonic. Illegal in the United States, but it is done around the world. It's dangerous though. Or non-embryonic stem cells, which means the afterbirth of a live pregnancy. Placenta, embryonic fluid, umbilical cord. Now, the FDA, our friends, next door to the IRS friends, said, well, ooh, this is dangerous. We're using stem cells. So let's make a new law. So that new law is 351, meaning amniotic tissue, the water, the placenta, which all work, by the way, extremely safe. Ask Lucy. So when I give lectures, I always say, so if amniotic tissue is illegal, was Lucy a drug dealer? Apparently she was for 3 million years, and every pregnant woman must be immune. So the government this year made it illegal to use those substances. Not because it doesn't work, because it does work. So they want to slow walk the disease. I have a document. A lot of things happen in Arizona. You know, it's amazing. Dr. Reardon, who has a clinic in Panama, he's from Scottsdale. He practiced literally 2 blocks away from me, and I did not know that. I knew his partner. He left Scottsdale, went to Panama, has a beautiful clinic down there. He treats autism, Alzheimer's, you name it. You can fix anything basically with this, but it's against the law to use IV, umbilical tissue, and then the second law they came up with was 361. You can use it if there is no systemic effect, you can't advertise, you can't talk about it, and it must have homologous use. Anybody know what that word means? No. It means like for like. So this is the carpal tunnel. The tunnel on the foot is called the tarsal tunnel. Similar but different function. So they said, you can use it, I can use it, if it's homologous use. Well, I looked at the law, this is just this year, that's why my book is delayed, because I had to articulate this answer, because I know they're going to be knocking on my door. So I thought to myself, wait a minute, the umbilical tube is conduit, has the artery, nerve, and vein inside. This is a conduit, artery, nerve, and vein. It innervates the muscle, and that's its function. So if the supportive tissue, which is called what that's another thing I wonder about. He was in the 1600s, his name was John Morgan. What was he doing? He got his name in the 1600s. that's a supportive tissue. Well, it has a rich source of stem cells and also growth factors. And so I thought, well, wait a minute, if that's a supportive tissue, I can inject it here. I can inject it in any what we call fiber osseous tunnels, which are the conduits that supply every organ system in your body. So yes, we can do that. Now, FDA may not agree with me, but that's what I do. Now, if you want to do it IV, which is another world of magnitudes of amazement, and I've had it done. And if we have that video, could you put that video on? This is one of the clinics around the world. This is one that's down in Puerto Vallarta.
This is Josh, Dream Body Clinic, here again, Dr. Jacoby, and we were just talking about, you got a new book that's coming out soon, right?
I do, and if I get more relaxed down here at Dream Body, it'll never get out.
Yeah, it should be out in about 2 months. I did want to finish it up after I visited your clinic, because it's very important that the tone in the book is not anti-American medicine. It's pro-stem cell. And how to get unglued is the name of the book. I'm really big into the fact that you need to reset your epigenetics. Got it? And obviously, what a better place than resetting your epigenetics than in Mexico.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just such a different environment down here. Hooked up to the IV right now with the stem cells, and I got it.
So we just did 100 million in the IV, and now we're doing the vitamins. Like, think of the stem cells are like the manager on the construction site, guiding the repair, and want to make sure they got enough bricks to build the house. So
Yeah, that's exactly what I use in my metaphor. And it's that simple. I mean, as we wear and tear through life, we need some reconstruction. Yeah, I need a good architect, and you're that architect here in Mexico, for sure. We talked about a lot of things on this trip. I was just talking about the Battle of the Nile,
yeah,
and which is a fascinating story of where all this epigenetics started in 1794 with Etienne Geoffroy Saint Hilaire in his debate with Cuvier in the late 1700s. What was the story? Was it Darwinian or Lamarck, or was it really epigenetics? And he started that whole concept. Here we are, a couple years later, and you're using stem cells, and we can't do the things that you're doing here that in the United States. Now, we can use certain things. We can use umbilical tissue, long as it's homologous use, and that is such a difficult thing to explain. But homologous use means like for like in Latin, and using the umbilical cord, which is supportive tissue of the umbilical cord, the Wharton's jelly. By the way, we talked about that yesterday.
yeah.
John Wharton, 1600s, from England, he got his name on this supportive tissue. And we can use it as long as homologous use, meaning if the conduit from the mother to the baby is a conduit, the umbilical cord, then my thinking, we certainly can use it in neurovascular bundles such as carpal tunnel or any other neurovascular bundle. In my field of neuropathy, certainly we can use it down there. Now, the FDA may not agree with me totally, but I'm trying to use the homologous use as long as we use tissue that's minimally manipulated.
And you were saying why you think it fits is because most people don't know, but there's a big nerve that goes through the umbilical cord, correct?
Yes. And so in my investigation on the umbilical cord, which I did not have a lot of knowledge years ago before I started this, the umbilical cord is an amazing structure when you really think about it. It's a neurovascular bundle. And we have artery and nerve connecting the mom and the fetus. And there's also a nerve involved, which I did not know. And it's and the reason is because it has cholinergic tissue, which means that it has a neurovascular component. but you can cut the umbilical cord and not cause any pain to the baby or to the mom, because there are no nerve, any receptors. And that was something I didn't realize.
Yeah.
So when you think about nature, making those accommodations for us, we wouldn't be here. The other thing I learned about umbilical cord is that from the C-section where the umbilical cord is taken, most labs like to process them within 36 hours, which is another unusual concept, that it is a live cell and probably past 36 hours, but ideally you want to get them in that time frame. So I guess nature provided that a fetus delivered, the mother didn't always survive, but the baby could survive for 2-3 maybe.
Okay, so I'm getting the stem cells as I was speaking. That's how complicated it is. I mean, really. Now, I didn't really have any problem, and it was funny because the doctors down there, they said, I'd go through the same physical. So, well, how many medicines do you take? And I went, none. Do you have any pain? And I went, no. But one of the things that I always have worn glasses, and I need them for up close and down to test this. It was so hot in Puerto Vallarta, that's where that clinic is, and I was steaming up, and I went to play tennis, and I couldn't see because it was steaming up, and I just had the stem cells right there, and that was the next day. I said, well, okay, I'll try to play without my glasses. I had never played without my glasses, and I could play. And now I don't use them anymore. I use them for up close, but I can see pretty good playing pickleball or tennis or whatever. So the point I want to make is, and I'll make this last point, this stuff is safe. I had an L4 rupture. I had that done to myself 9 years ago. I was facing surgery. I said, well, let's give it a try. Well, no one wanted to do it. I did it myself. So I was better back playing tennis in 3 days. I had a rotator cuff tear. I did that. So it works, it's safe. Now it's not going to work 100% on everybody, but it should be treatment of choice for everybody. And it's not. Government is slow walking the cure. So to my last point, in 2003, another Arizona guy, Senator McCain, convened what's called a non-embryonic stem cell symposium in the U.S. Senate. You can look it up if they haven't taken it down. And they had about 17 scientists. It was 62 pages. I read the whole thing. And I interviewed some of the doctors. They looked at diseases you've never heard of. Did it work? Yes. What did the senators say? It's a miracle. That's 20 years ago. We're talking autism. I was down in Panama with Dr. Reardon, autistic kids all over the place. Muscular dystrophy. Remember Jerry's kids? We grew up on that one, didn't we? I wonder where that money is. They never had a cure. In Panama, I saw them. They couldn't walk. They threw their crutches away. They were walking. Kids that couldn't talk, they were talking. That was 20 years ago. That's disgraceful. Okay? We need more research, they say. They are liars. Okay? So, if you want to live forever, eliminate sugar. There are 1,000 things. Dan and I were in Vegas 2 weeks ago. There's 600 vendors there, like you, that have devices and things that help you live forever. Thank you. Wow.
So